So it's nice to be here with all of you tonight. My name is Lucia. I'm from Women in Tech, and I'm talking to Aishwarya tonight. She's head of customer success at Maltego Technologies, and we're gonna talk about cybersecurity, about her life in Munich, and her community, Women in Cybersecurity, tonight. And yeah, maybe you just want to introduce yourself for a second, Aish.
Sure. Hi, everybody, and thank you for having me, Lucia and Regina. My name is Aishwarya. It is difficult to pronounce, so a lot of people in Munich and in Germany call me Aish, which is a lot shorter and simpler. I'm originally from India, from Bangalore, which is the tech hub in India. And currently, I live in Munich. This is the beautiful park and the view next to me. And I've been in Munich since the last 7 years. I moved here to actually do my master's in power engineering at the TU Munich. And I also did an honors in technology management from the CDTM. So that's a bit about my background. And as Lucia mentioned, I currently head customer success at Maltego. And the pure joy of like doing that comes from the fact that I simplify technology for, a bigger purpose. And therefore, I am also a very proud woman in tech.
Cool. And so how come you started you started with engineering and and a degree in power engineering, right? So how come you're in the technology or more of a cybersecurity field right now? For me, it's not intuitive, actually.
Yeah, it doesn't. I don't think the paths like directly coincide. And I think that's the wonderful thing about being in technology. You don't necessarily have to have like that degree in order to get into that profession. And cybersecurity
Right.
is one of those fields which it's super open hearted and the community is super open to having you there. Knowledge is kind of flowing everywhere. You can kind of grasp information from everywhere. And you don't necessarily need to kind of, study it since the time you were in kindergarten in order to get into the field. And for me, I think it was quite organic, to be very honest. My core reason to get into technology, I was always motivated by technology. I've always been fascinated by technology, anything to do with science. And I started with electrical engineering, which then led to power engineering, purely because I knew that I cannot study electrical engineering as a hobby. Like I cannot just like how you code. And computers somehow came very intuitively to me, and I loved programming and coding. It was always a side project for me. I loved coding microprocessors. I loved even as a 10-year-old, I loved creating PowerPoints for no reason. So it was just something that I really liked doing, and I knew that even if I took a degree in computer science, it's not going to help me so much because I'm going to do it anyway as a hobby. But if I went into electrical engineering, renewable energy, climate change, all of that was very like on the top of my head throughout. So I thought, okay, let me do electrical engineering. Let me get into power engineering. Let me learn about electrical and mechanical and all of those things. When you're in technology and when you're in engineering, it kind of just it focuses more on the macro level problem solving than it does really about like the technical core bits of it. So even when I was studying electrical engineering, I never saw myself, for example, working in a power plant
Mhm.
or working in a lab. And those were all things that I knew that it was just out of curiosity that I did engineering. And I think one thing led to another, and I landed up in this field because I love working with people and technology, which is kind of what got me into customer success, which is pretty much like teaching people how to use a tool really well in order to like fight crime. And because of my love for computers, this tool, learning about cybersecurity, learning about open source intelligence, learning about how to do investigations effectively, all of that came very organically.
Mhm.
So that's kind of how it led me there. And like I said, the community, I've been in this industry now for 3 years, and the community has been very open. I have been like in I've given talks, I train users on how to use the tool at large conferences. And every time I see it as a learning for me because I learned so much from all the work that everybody does, and everybody is very similar in that sense in the community if you actually look at it. So that's basically how I went from electrical engineering to cybersecurity.
Interesting. And maybe you could explain us a little bit about cybersecurity. What is it, or is it what we think it is, or is there actually, you know what I mean? There is a
Yeah.
cliche and an idea of somebody who does not know anything about it, and the reality. So maybe you could bring a bridge or build a bridge here.
Absolutely. So, cybersecurity is a really broad term. There are a lot of different job roles and tasks that you can take up under cybersecurity. It means like you mentioned, Lucia, it means different things for different organizations and companies. To keep it really brief and try to get an understanding of what actually happens there. So, basically, for a large MNC, like think about the big four consultants, for example, and so on. Cybersecurity can mean protecting their own company data or their customer data from being leaked. So think banks, think companies like Amazon. They're really trying hard to make sure that our data is not being leaked outside to hackers or people who want to misuse that information, like bank account information, card information. So there is that front, right? So you have different teams in these large MNCs actually trying to protect the perimeter of the company, either to protect their own company data, which is very confidential, or customer data, so our data, which is in their systems, right? Then there is also one more aspect of cybersecurity in these large companies, which is literally protecting their C level. So think about protecting like Bill Gates, think about protecting Mark Zuckerberg, right? So there are cybersecurity teams who take care of making sure that any email information is not leaked, it's not going outward, or not even leaked, like nobody's able to hack into the systems and get into that information, right? So that's a bit like very broadly speaking in terms of what it means for like large multinationals. What it could mean, for example, for law enforcement could literally be protecting citizens, right? So it could mean preventing child sexual abuse. It can mean preventing human trafficking. It can mean identifying illegal weapon trade proactively before it happens, or drug trade. So law enforcement uses it for different things, and it could also mean like hunting down criminals. So once a terrorist attack has happened, once a criminal has been found, it's about confiscating their devices and trying to make sure that that information gets them to the next criminal or get them to the next group of criminals who are actually around that particular group of people committing crimes, right? So like I said, cybersecurity can mean different things for different
Mhm.
organizations, and but this is just kind of a broad overview of what it could mean, just to get an understanding.
Yeah, as an individual, you would mostly think about passwords, or you would
Correct.
think about how safe is your digital bank account, but you would not think of the bigger company issues.
Yeah.
Some bigger companies might have. And personally, I feel that it's a very important topic, and especially in Germany, we have some issues with that. But maybe let's not dive too deep into that. Maybe you could just explain us um, what is bad. Let's call it bad code, not code, but bad
Right.
malware. Let's say we call it malware. But maybe you could also explain what that word means.
Mhm. So malware is just short form for malicious software.
Mhm.
So that basically means, that again, that's malware is also a very broad term. So you can have different kinds of malware that gets attacked. So let me again boil it down to what I mentioned about security and what the correlation is between malware and cybersecurity. So there are different ways of actually stealing information from systems. A lot of you may be familiar with people actually calling you and saying, yeah, we're from XYZ bank and I want your your card information or your phone information, whatever it is. But malware generally means that this is software that's installed in your system, so they try to get into your system by actually installing something that can either passively or actively watch what you're doing. So for example, one of the I like talking about this more from example because it becomes more concrete to understand. One of the malwares that I get excited about talking, why? Because it's just the extent of how intense it was, and also the effect it had on the community was like quite crazy. And maybe there are many more similar to this, but this is one of my like personal favorites. It's called WannaCry, and some of you may be aware of it. It was like it made a huge noise, and basically what happened there was the attackers, they found a vulnerability in the Microsoft OS. So, you get these updation requests on your system saying, hey, an update is available. Why does that happen? Because an iOS, so Apple or Microsoft or Linux, whoever it is, has spotted a vulnerability in the system, and they said, hey, we're patching it, we're fixing it so that nobody can enter the system anymore. Now, if you don't update it, that patch kind of remains. And there are a lot of people, I mean, you and I, even like when we have these updates coming up on our systems, we're like, oh, tomorrow, tomorrow, let's do it later. And what happens is attackers know that there is this vulnerability, and now I can actually get into systems, and there are compromised systems. So what happened with WannaCry was that attackers used this vulnerability in a Microsoft system, and they exploited it by basically encrypting the data in the system. What that means is they locked everything. They said, sorry, you as a user do not have access to this. Pay us money, and then we will, pay us money
Yeah.
through cryptocurrency, and then we'll release that data to you, right? And
Mm-hmm.
the problem is not that they took up like individual data. No, they actually attacked large healthcare systems like the NHS, which is the UK, national healthcare system. And what that meant was literally critical healthcare systems were switched off. Everything was offline. And that's crazy because in the situation that we're in now, if you go to the doctor, all your information is on the system, all your history is on the system. And if you're someone who's, a critical patient, that is the information that all of these surgical equipment, your life, your MRI scanners, all of that, even your surgical theater equipment, all of that is based on the information that's saved on that system. So just imagine the gravity of that situation where they've exploited this. And of course, the government, the NHS, everyone would be willing to pay them off and be like, yeah, sure, we just need the money, we just need the data back so that we can get on with saving human lives. So this is just one of the examples of malware. There are many more. There's also one more called Stuxnet, which was used to attack industrial control systems. So similar to IoT devices, which basically run power plants. So again, there, like, if somebody is able to hack into your entire power grid, that means an entire city, entire community is out of power for a really long time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's basically what malware is, and that's kind of how it's also slightly connected to or stems from the whole cybersecurity topic.
Thank you so much. Somebody's laughing. No, thank you so much. Very interesting. And I was just trying to rethink this again, what you said, because it was a lot of information. Where do you see the biggest leaks? Maybe that's it's a too big question, but do you see any in our region here in Germany, for instance? Do you see any bigger issues for the future where we would tap into a cybersecurity problem
Yeah,
with
I mean,
cybersecurity?
it's again, it the basically any device, any way of actually accessing internet is an entry point for any cyber attack. So every
Mm-hmm.
single device that, like, for example, one very easy example is that my husband and I debated so much over just having like a Google Home device at home. Like, it took, like, literally Google Home is like, we literally bought it home beginning of last year, because like once COVID started, we were like, oh, let's set up a couple of devices. But literally any device that's connected to the internet is a threat, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because that just gives the attacker a way to enter your home system. And I don't mean to be like scaring people off, but they don't really think about, like, for example, I always question like smart fridges, right? Like, it's smart, but I don't know how often they're patching it, how often they're actually fixing the, like the vulnerabilities that are in there. And it's cool, like it's a cool technology, and everybody like jumps to buy it immediately. But God knows, like, it's connected to the internet. Likely your Facebook account, your Spotify account is connected through the smart fridge, and all of that is entry point for a cyber attack. They can basically get in through that, through to your Wi-Fi network, and get in touch with your laptops, everything that's connected to the Wi-Fi, right?
Mm-hmm.
So from a personal level, that is, one of the main entry points. And I don't think that's like a Germany specific thing, that's a
Yeah.
global phenomenon.
Yeah.
And then of course on a company level, now that we're more in a work from home situation or like workation situations, we're taking company data with us everywhere. So you have to think about when you're working from the airport, not just like physically is someone looking at like the password you're entering into your system, but also, you know, how safe is the airport internet that you're able to like do bank transactions in an airport, right? So all of that, like it's really hard to like, you know, nail it on the head and then say, yeah, this is where it is and this is where we have to
Yeah.
cross the leak. But it all boils down to being careful and highly aware of like, okay, who's this email coming from, what internet am I connected to, can I use a VPN instead of directly connecting to the internet, do I really need the school device at home? um, yeah, and even when it comes to like, I think a lot of at least larger corporations have this security, IT security training, which before I got into this field I used to think was such a drag. I used to be like, why are you telling me this? I know I have to like log off my computer when I step away. But come to think of it, like, you know, that's exactly how people get into the system, right? Like they know it's easy to spot, like in a large MNC, to spot, you know, how email addresses are framed, first name dot last name at company.com. And it's
Mm.
not very difficult to guess someone's password if it's 1234. Like it's easy to guess that and get into one system and compromise every other system on there. So it's hard to say. I guess it's just about being careful, being aware of what what is it that you're exposing and how to protect it in a better way.
Yeah. Um, the reason why I asked you, my intention to ask you for a speak up in the beginning was that I constantly have this kind of fear, and I think I'm not alone because I have been attacked already. I've been attacked on a personal level, but also I know people who not I don't have a company, but I know people who have a company who had certain cyber attacks.
Yeah.
Sometimes there were people from inside the company, sometimes from the outside, and it was not funny because then the whole infrastructure is threatened. You might lose. It's a big thing. So I think it's sometimes even not seen yet in our society.
Yeah.
Um, so I don't know. Maybe you have a different point of view or view on this. And let me get there from another angle. I was wondering if you have a different view on how Germans perceive technology, because you are originally from India. Or would you say there is no such a thing that there's, because I know that in India a lot of young students already learn coding. They are very close to computers. It's super normal for young students.
Mm.
Whereas in Germany, we're somehow a bit uh, less educated, let's call it this way.
I think that's a bit much, but yeah, I it's funny that you asked me that. So I do feel like there's like one aspect of peer pressure that, like, you know, also in India there was, even now it's that way. Like you throw a stone, it'll most likely land on an engineer. Like it's that,
Mm-hmm.
like engineering is like going to school. Like majority of the people do engineering. But what I've realized is that there are a lot many more engineers in India because from childhood science is somehow cool. Like I've never been in a classroom
Also for
where,
women?
yeah, also for women, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
It's just cool. It's cool if like you can actually like put wires together and make a light bulb glow. It's just cool. And then I think the only people who, at least in India, in my peer group at least, the ones who don't follow through with technology are purely because they're really passionate about something else. You know, like I really want to design clothes, I really want to become a journalist and stuff like that. Otherwise it's usually like technology is like one of the paths that like majority of the people follow, because from like, you know, even in school we have like physics labs, chemistry labs, computer labs,
Mm-hmm.
um, physics from a very young age, in the sense of like just the theory of everything, coding from a very young age. I think
When did you start coding,
so.
for
Actually for
instance?
me, that's what I was coming to. For me actually I think it started a bit later. I started coding probably when I was in the sixth grade. So I think that is when I'm 11 years old.
Okay.
But in fact, actually come to think of it, I don't know actually what the point of it was, and I don't even know if anybody knows about it. But in first grade I was taught something called logo. And that also had to do with coding, but I really don't know why they taught it to us. I really don't know anybody who knows about it, but in first grade they taught us how to do this logo coding, which was basically like you had to draw boxes and fill it with color with code.
Okay.
They literally taught you like, and this is where I don't even know to speak English, but I know to write an if statement, for example. So it was crazy. Yeah. Anyway, so that was my first instance with coding, was in first grade or so. And then after that, I think sixth grade onwards, it just became kind of, I loved coding. So I would just like keep kind of, coding all the time. And I used to get like included for scholarships and like get sponsored by like coding camps to come and learn coding. And my dad used to go drop me every evening after school and pick me back up. And somehow I liked it, like, like when they used to teach me like, oh, let's write a quote on how to make an omelette, and I was like, yes, let's do that. Or like, let's write a code on like, I enter the day number, and then it says if it's a Monday or a Sunday. And I'm like, yes,
Wow.
let's do that. I used to get very pumped with all of that. But yeah, so that's basically how, it's been a part of things like everything that I was doing since school, like throughout school. I think I don't know about here, right? Because I moved here to do my master's and I didn't
Okay.
actually study in school. But one thing that I do feel a bit saddened about is that I understand that in between school that, already like I think in fourth grade or fifth grade, students are pushed towards a non-science back field if they don't have the right grades, or the teachers feel they're not fit for it. I feel like that's quite you know it's not great, because to be honest, my math, like throughout my life, everyone told me like, you need to be good at math if you need to get into coding. And I never thought of myself being good at math. I used to scrape by, and like, my dad used to like really take a lot of like classes for me, like homeschool me to be better at math all the time. And still I'm here, like I made it, and I'm good at technology. I aced it at TUM, which is like a really competitive environment. And to do like, doing like thermodynamics and all of that with like the kind of confidence I had in math is like something else. So I feel like that's something that they don't do in India, right? Like they don't say, hey, look, your math grades are bad, so you cannot continue with science.
Okay. Interesting.
So at the end of the day, it really boils down to, okay, you want to do it, let's find a way to do it, right? So that's I think one of the biggest differences. So already at a very young age, you're kind of pushed away from a technological field here. That's what I feel from what I know of the educational
I
system.
agree. Yeah, yeah. And it's always related to math here. It's
Yeah.
yeah, if you want to study informatics or computer science, sorry, informatic in German,
Mm,
um, you basically have to study a lot of math, or
mm,
that's what the prejudice is. And there is a mind shift nowadays, and there are different programs to change that. But that's why I was asking you, and also to get a different um, uh, kind of perspective on that. But I
yeah, I
think
think also like I was also part of this female tech leaders group in Munich, and even there, like a lot of the tech, like the women I met, who wanted to get into the tech field, they would always be like, oh yeah, tech people are so intelligent. Like, leave the group people. Like, if I take my dog out for a walk, and if like a lady's like, oh, what are you doing? And I'm like, oh, I'm in this tech field. They're like, oh, you must be so intelligent. And I'm like, you don't have to have like 100% marks in order to get into technology. And I feel like a lot of people who may be interested get pushed away from it purely because they've been told, oh, you need to like really be class topper to get into tech. I totally disagree with that.
Mhm. But are you good at math or not?
I am average, I would say.
Okay.
I really don't think
Yeah.
I'm like great
Okay.
at math, but I
Okay.
think I'm better. For some reason, I'm better at calculus than I am at like average, like daily math.
Yeah.
I don't know
Okay.
why. Calculus is not useful at all. But
Okay. It was not a, it was just out of curiosity. So let's go back to cybersecurity, because I was wondering if there is some kind of police out there in this. I'm asking very simple questions. I hope you understand why.
yeah, yeah.
get very like, is there something like a police out there, cyber cops who are scrolling through the internet, checking if there are hackers, or no, hacker is actually not the right word. I'm sorry. Attacks somewhere.
Mhm.
Is there something like that? Can I
Yeah,
feel
there
more
are.
secure now?
I think they're trying. They're really trying hard. I know that from like first-hand experience because like my job basically involves working with them very closely and supporting them with the kind of investigations that they do. I know that they're working very hard. So basically,
Mm-hmm.
in Germany, you have the BKA, which is the Bundeskriminalamt, which is the state criminal agency, if I translated that correctly. So we have the BKA, and then also you have a bunch of like state police. So the LKA, the LKAs, the Landeskriminalamt. So you have a bunch of like those polices also like monitoring the internet and monitoring like everything that comes in through customs or any kind of like large sets of like emails sent out and so on and so forth. But they also work a lot on like, so they also have groups on like terrorism, they have groups on like monitoring kind of like internet activity and so on and so forth. But also e- sometimes it's proactive, so like you said, they don't scrape the internet. So like Germany, especially because data privacy laws and this GDPR, they don't actually get as much information as you think the police gets, at least like in comparison to the US, which makes their life, to be honest, a lot harder. So it actually makes it harder for them to track down criminals, to track down kind of communications that the criminals have had with others in Germany. But still, I think they really try to keep the internet a safe place. So it's very easy actually. So not only in Germany, so if there's anybody else attending from outside of Germany, so there's the FBI, of course, which has a cybercrime unit. There is the Indian police, which has a cybercrime unit. Interpol has a cybercrime unit.
Hmm.
Europol, National Crime Agency in the UK, for example. Um, Basically all of the countries have cybercrime departments, and if you actually Google it, it's very easy to report a crime. So if you feel like you've been a part of like, or you've been threatened, or you're part of some activity that shouldn't be happening, you can literally just click and like register a complaint. So there are cyber police out there who are like
Okay.
monitoring activity.
So I just Google help, or what do I do?
Just
Help.
local
I
cyber
actually
police.
checked. Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So if you're Germany, if you just look up, I think if you look up BKA Cyber Crime Unit, I think they also, I think, have an English page, if I'm not wrong.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. That's good to know.
Mm.
And what are you doing at your job? So at Maltego Technologies, what is your daily job there?
It's a good question. So I had customer success at Maltego, and from the title itself, it doesn't sound very technical, but it is extremely technical. So basically, just to give a little bit of background also on what Maltego is, Maltego is a link analysis tool which investigators across different industries use. So those industries can be, again, like I said, in the cybersecurity description, they can be from law enforcement, they can be from large MNCs, they can be from trust and safety teams. And basically by link analysis, what that means is, those typical detective movies where they're like, oh, he committed the crime and we found the phone there. And, like you're putting threads across things. That's basically what people do on Maltego. So you have to imagine that if I take an example of a police guy, right? He has maybe 2 or 3 phones. He has also like social media information like Facebook, Instagram, whatever it is. And then he also has his own like reports on like older reports on that criminal itself. Now in order for a human being to do all of that manually, like look through call records, look through like physical, and also in Germany, by the way, most of the things are done like on paper. So like it's digitalization is still like a dream that is about to be achieved. So so they have to correlate all of that information together, and and in order to form one full picture of a crime that happened, or of a particular persona.
Mhm.
And now that's exactly what Maltego helps with. So the tool is basically help to like pull in different data sets together. And what I do as a part of customer success is basically enabling these investigators to pull that data in better. So whether it means working with a police officer to pull that data together, whether that means working with a cybersecurity analyst to like pull in, incident data, malware data, old phishing data, or email addresses of those who are compromised internally within the company. So basically, I along with the customer success team, guide them into how to do that with the help of a tool like Maltego so that they can visually lay it out. So basically, as in my role, I started out around 3 years ago. So that's when we were kind of scaling up the team in Munich. By the way, we're hiring, so reach out to me if you
What would you need to what would you need as what kind of skills would you need to have to start at your
well
company?
well
Or what are you
interesting
looking for?
technological topics,
Mm-hmm.
enthusiasm to save the world. And yeah,
Yes, always.
literally, like that's pretty, because that's exactly what drives me. That's exactly what drives, at least, everybody at Maltego, I feel. And the enthusiasm to, like, really, like, in terms of technical knowledge, I think, like, knowing what Maltego does, you can visit our website. It's maltego.com. You'll I think that's inspiring enough already. So
Okay.
yeah, that's pretty much what you would need for the role. And if you need to know more also, you can hit me up later on, and I'll be happy to take you through it. Yeah, so basically, when we started the team, it was me just, like, trying to really understand the industry, like, okay, what is happening, what is cybersecurity, and, like, what really does it mean, and how does this tool kind of play an efficient role in what problem does it solve, basically, right? um, and then we've scaled up the customer success team. Now we're a team of about six, just in well, we're a team of six globally, like, we're placed everywhere around the world. And we're scaling that up quite quickly as well. And basically, we help with, like, onboarding the customer, making sure they know how to use the tool well, understanding what the customer can really, like, do with the tool, and how they can make, how it can make them a better police officer, better security
So
analyst.
your typical customer is a policeman or a policewoman.
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly. So,
okay.
like, we
Cool.
have literally, like, like those cyber police, that's those
Cool.
are the guys who are our customers. And then we also, it's not just the law enforcement, right? Like I said, you also have large, like, MNC or internet companies. You have their threat intel analysts, you have, like, your basically your pen testers, your network security engineers. All of those guys are also,
Okay.
there's a whole range of personas in terms of customers. So yeah, so now, more recently, I've grown more into, like, I'm getting more away from, like, the technological aspect, and getting more into, like, guiding the team. So 80% of my time goes into, like, scaling up processes, developing metrics, and measuring success of the customers, basically.
Mm-hmm. Talking about team building, you also have a group of female cybersecurity, a community of women in cybersecurity. Maybe you would want to talk a bit about that, because that was where I found you, I think. Super interesting.
Yeah, so it's one of my passion projects, actually. So I started a meetup group for women in cybersecurity, but it's not necessarily only for women. Just so you know, it's to encourage women, and it's basically for women either in cybersecurity or wanting to know more about cybersecurity. Um, the inspiration for this group, basically, I went for the Munich security conference, which happens, I don't know how often it happens, but I went for it 1.5 years ago. And I went for the satellite event with just women, like, it was a woman only satellite event. And firstly, the number of people in that room was so few. It was like 30 people. And then the panelists were, like, really, like, top notch women from around the world, like, really, like, leaders in the government, leaders in, like, industry security, like, really people to look up to. um, and one thing that they all commonly said, like, it was a panel discussion, and one thing that they all commonly said was, we don't want a satellite event, thanks, but we want to be on the main stage, you know and that really, like, shook me to my bones. I'm like, yeah, what is this satellite event? Why aren't we on the main stage? Why isn't there, like, why isn't the norm, why isn't it the norm that these women are actually all on a panel together, right? Like, why is there, like, one woman in a panel of five? Why, so I really didn't understand. So I came back feeling very inspired that day, from the fact that there is such a minority in a group of such intelligent human beings. And I wanted to contribute to changing that. So what I actually came and did immediately was like, okay, what are the different groups in cybersecurity if somebody wants to advance? Like, think about like a 12-year-old who's like, oh, this is a cool topic, I want to learn. Where do they go? Other than school, like, where do they go? Um, and so I looked and looked and I couldn't find anything. Like, I couldn't find a group of women, at least in Munich. And I know that in the US there is this woman in cybersecurity, which is like this really really cool group, and there are a lot of those chapters as well in the US, and it's really established in the US. But in Germany I didn't see that at all. I didn't know where to look even. So um so I decided, okay, let me start this group, and to not only kind of pull in women who want to contribute something, but also to be a platform for others to hear about what are the different topics under cybersecurity. Is it just like one thing? Do I have to be a police officer to be in cybersecurity, or can I be anything else, right? Because that's something that even I'm learning step by step.
Yes.
So that's what I started it as. And yeah, I'm actually surprised. I was actually telling Regina that very recently there was like this massive uptick in the group itself, and now we're around like 45 members, which for me is a huge achievement. And I'm already like in talks with like multiple amazing women from around the world to organize the next couple of events. So I'm
Cool.
very very like eagerly looking forward to that. So it's going to be more about like it's not just for women in cybersecurity, but I feel like sometimes women also struggle when they're in a technical field, just in terms of personal growth and adjusting to a company. So I'm trying to get like women from like all walks of life, to not just teach cybersecurity topics, but also like professional growth and such. So I'm quite excited for the next months, and how it's coming up.
And what are your main learnings here? How is the like how is the oh, I'm sorry. How many women are in cybersecurity in comparison to men, for instance, or other
It's so
groups?
hard to say, and I'll tell you why. Because they don't show themselves. Like,
Hmm.
they really like, I have asked, like, I made this post on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago because I was so frustrated and it really drove me up the wall. I ask women who seem to be established enough in their roles in cybersecurity to like come and talk about what they do on a day-to-day basis. Nothing fancy, just like, hey, what do you do on a day-to-day basis, and can you make it relatable for someone who doesn't know what you're doing? And usually it's like a no, I don't think I'm good enough, I don't know if I can, and that sort of an answer. And so I was really like, okay, why aren't they showing themselves? These, like, if you really want to encourage women in technology, you need to be coming in herds. You need to be like, look at us, we're here, we're doing this, and we're doing it well. And I didn't see, like, it's been really hard. So I can't tell how many women are actually there in comparison to women. I know that it is a minority, but I
Mhm.
also know that the women who are in, even the minority that are in there, they're so powerful and they're so knowledgeable. Like,
Mhm.
the few that I've seen on panel discussions, on like the kind of contributions they make to cybersecurity industry itself, it's amazing. So even if you follow them on Twitter, you'll know what I'm talking about. um
Yeah,
Really. So I do think it's a minority. I do think it can be improved so much, but I think it can only be improved if we start being more loud about our presence and the contributions that we're making.
definitely. I agree with you 100%. We just had a conversation yesterday in our community, or with Regina and Ekaterina about it. It's actually once you're in technology, you would find very you would find great women. There are still a minority, but once you're in there, there are still some hurdles. But actually, it's
Mhm.
if you find a great company, you would find a lot of support. Um, do you have any clue how a young female student, or maybe also women who already work, would get into cybersecurity? What would be the first steps here? And is there a difference maybe between a male or a female approach, or would you say it's the same thing? No difference.
Yeah, I don't.
How would we start? Because personally, I'm always about, for me, it's always the network. You need a good community. You need people who are supportive. You need people to talk to you, maybe mentor you, or yeah, give you some advice, maybe not to follow every step, but somehow have an idea about what the job could be about and how to get successful in there.
Yeah, that's a really good question. So, I think the first thing is like one thing in terms of like just the gender discrepancy. I wouldn't say there's like a male or a female approach, except for the fact that I feel like women are a bit more inhibited. So the whole like, oh, I didn't study it. Oh, I'm not like, I don't think I'm fit enough, or like I don't actually have a degree in like masters in cybersecurity, blah, blah, blah. So let me finish that and then maybe I'll apply.
Mm.
So I think the only thing that I would try to like challenge there is literally like get rid of that kind of thinking, right? Like, because the community, like I said earlier, is quite open to having you in it, and they're willing to spend time in coaching you. Like, they're
Yeah.
not saying come with like years of experience or come with these degrees. And that this is something you'll see in cybersecurity through and through. You will not see this, for example, if you want to work in a power plant, because
Yes,
that is like
agree.
that is not going to happen. But for cybersecurity, it's very, very open, and um, it's very, like, hey, come with what you know and let's build on that. Because also, one thing that is really cool about cybersecurity is in cybersecurity you can figure out a field that works for you. Like for me, for example, I love doing open source intelligence and person of interest investigations, because I grew up with internet growing alongside me. So I'm able to easily, like, very intuitively, it comes to me, okay, if I have an email, I can find this account, and from an Instagram account I can get a post, I can get like the tags, I can get, like, it comes to me intuitively. And just like that, I think there are a lot of people for whom network essentials come naturally. Like, they know what a domain means, they know what a website means, they know how it's all connected, right? So there are different segments that you can get into. So that's the first thing, is like shed your inhibition, shed like what you think you know of it, and just Google it. There are, like I said, there are a couple of resources that I'd be happy to share about, like, which women that I look up to in the industry have written about how to get into the industry. um, and they talk a lot about, like, especially in cybersecurity, they talk a lot about attending events. So it's a lot about like going to different conferences. There are a lot of conferences which happen around cybersecurity. There's this Black Hat, there's DEF CON, there's B-Sides, there's a B-Sides Munich, by the way. Join those local communities basically, and you get to actually go to these different talks and understand like what your niche is and what is it that's magnetically kind of attracting you to it, right? That's one. The second one is, jump into capture the flag events. So they call CTFs. I personally love them. I'm not great at them, but I can spend days on just like doing CTFs.
What's a CTF?
CTF is basically, you're given a mission, and you're supposed to, like, not necessarily hack, but you're supposed to kind of know like some network basic, some open source intelligence basic, like some basics of different aspects of cybersecurity, in order to find the flag. And the flag can be like a video playing at the end. The flag can be like, there was this really fun one I did, which was like, I was supposed to hack into a bank and transfer loan illegally into my account. And it's like an entirely similar, it's like kind of escape room, but like cybersecurity.
Okay, sounds
So
fun.
yeah, so you get to also learn there, because when you are uncovering solutions, there are other people in the team who help you uncover those solutions, and it's like you're learning while you're doing.
Okay.
So that's another way. I know B-Sides Munich is coming up, and they have CTFs as well, so sign up for that. Yeah, and just generally, like, if there are any online, what do you call it, like courses, like open online courses, sign up for it, not because you need the certificate, but because those skills are what get tested in any interview you may go for. So they don't really look at, like, what is the certificate you have and what kind of background you have. Another great resource that I can recommend is the SANS Institute. Is SANS Institute. They also have a lot of training, and even how to find a job in cybersecurity in the different industries. They share that all
Cool.
there.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a question. What about Black Hoodie?
Black hoodie.
Black Hoodie.
Yeah, I think that's just such a stereotype.
Okay.
But it's a typical kind of like a hacker
Okay.
image, right? Like somebody in
I'm
a
also
hoodie sitting
black
in.
today,
I'm actually blue,
currently.
by the way.
Okay, that's a okay stereotype. Are there any stereotypes? Let's talk about stereotypes. I love it. No, that's not really. But are there any kind of stereotypes in cybersecurity which you would like to get rid of?
I don't know actually.
Okay.
I think there is this whole black hoodie thing. I even make I to be honest, even I do that sometimes where I'm like, oh
Everyone.
yeah, like I call them basement hackers. But it's like, people just like I literally mean that by like the like the bad intention actors basically who are like sitting in a basement and hacking with a hoodie on. I think when you say you're in cybersecurity, somehow automatically everyone associates you with being an aloof person, someone who doesn't is socially awkward, and have met some great people who are not.
Mm.
So I think that's one of the stereotypes that we can shed.
So there was another question a bit earlier. I just Googled Maltego and there is a community free version of it. What projects can we do on an individual level?
That's a really good question. So, to give a little bit of background, so Maltego originated from the community. So it started as a community tool and then became something that like a lot of organizations were like, oh, this is cool and let's have it. So the community version basically lets you do a couple of things. Like you can do network footprinting. So like put in your favorite website in there and see what kind of servers they're hosted on, for example. Um, yeah, and then there is also like it's slightly limited, but you can also like kind of put in your own entities, which is basically like link in your own like people. And there are a lot of like for example, some of you may be familiar with Have I Been Pawned, which is basically where all did like your email address get leaked. Because for example, there was a Tumblr hack like a database hack many years ago. There was also a Dropbox one. So you can use actually like things like Have I Been Pawned to actually see if your email address has been breached or not, if it was a part of a paste bin, and you can actually do a little bit of a cleanup of your internet self. So that's some projects that and I can recommend some more actually. So I'd be happy to like, I don't know if you actually like you send around like a follow-up email after these.
Yeah, I will do a recap. It will might take a while though, and we will collect the links you mentioned.
Yeah.
I might just send you another email afterwards, and then
Yeah.
we'll exchange the links. But yeah, it
Yeah.
won't
I
get
can
lost.
send around a bunch of, cool things that you can do with the community
Cool.
version of
That
things.
would be great. There was another follow-up here. I meant the women-only reverse engineering workshop, Black Hoodie. There's apparently a workshop called Black Hoodie.
Sounds
Sounds
great.
fun.
I'm not fully aware of that, to be
Okay.
honest.
Oh, it looks cool. I just
Yeah.
Googled, I just checked it out. Looks cool. I will add it as well to our link collection. Um, Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any other questions, just text us or send them in the chat. Otherwise, I will just keep on asking. Aish. Because I know you're also a speaker or something, or you had some kind of speaking events. Is that correct? Or
Yeah. So I personally just like I lost the Zoom screen. Just give me a minute. I don't know how that happened. Just disappeared. Um, Jeez. Sorry. Just give me a minute.
technology? I had
Oh,
the
we
same
can
issue
later.
today.
Um, oh yeah, okay, never mind. As long as you can see me and hear me,
I
yeah.
see you. I see you.
So,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So personally, I'm a huge advocate for women in technology, or just generally minority groups in technology. I feel very strongly about encouraging more women to be in technology, and not just in technology, but also kind of general career growth and personal development. I also like I'm a part of. So I studied at the CDTM in Munich, which is like a honors in technology management that's done along with the TUM and LMU. And there we have, for example, a mentorship program. So I'm like heavily involved there, and I enjoy it quite a lot. Like I like learning about like what is it that people are really like what people who are younger than me are right now going through, and what is it that I learned maybe the hard way, and I can kind of impart. And I see that correlation a lot with women, with Indians who move to Germany and so on, not just about settling in, but also like about the job situation and so on. So one of the things that I usually like to speak about is just that, like how to grow yourself personally as a minority, as a person of color, as a woman in technology. And then on a professional level, like I said, my favorite topics are open source intelligence and person of interest investigations and everything around Maltego. So I personally love the tool. Like even in my free time, I'm like playing around with it. And it's a great, I'm not trying to promote the company or anything, but like I know it
I see
sounds
you're
like
passionate. I see you're passionate.
but I genuinely like playing with the tool and the things that it does. It's almost always like magic to me. So usually, professionally speaking, my topics revolve around like open source intelligence and person of interest investigations around
Yeah.
in Maltego, but also outside. So like understanding social media and understanding tactics around understanding a persona, what sort of groups they associate themselves with, and so on.
So what did you learn the hard way? Where do you see, yeah, what was more difficult for you, maybe also as you moved from India to Germany? It might you might have. I have a lot of international friends, but we communicate a lot about that, and I know that there are certain topics that pop up all the time. So I ask you some kind of in a rhetorical way, but it would just be nice to hear it from you if they're aware of some kind of
Mm.
things that were difficult.
So I actually enjoyed the move to Germany, to be honest. Like
Mhm. Cool.
I like being in cold water and I like being outside my comfort zone a lot. It like I still like traveling to countries where I don't understand anything they're saying. That was not the case in Germany when I moved here, luckily. But then it was challenging in a way, right? Like the housing situation in Munich, for
Oh
example,
yes.
is a pain. It takes a while. I got lucky there in terms of just like finding a dorm and stuff like that. But I think one of the more difficult situations, to be very honest with you, was literally like after my master's, kind of finding the niche where I want a job in. The one aspect of that, being an English speaker and not being proficient enough in German, was that I oftentimes was like getting very like behind the desk jobs, in the sense that I don't really get to interact with too many people and I'm just like doing Excel sheet work and or PowerPoint work. And like I was really questioning, like, did I really study to come to a point where I'm doing PowerPoint every day, and that sort of a thing. So I was actually like questioning. I think that was like the most difficult part of literally like, okay, you finished studying and now we have to like look for a job or like find something that fits, right? Luckily the network here that got built within my study period, like, was really good. And like I said, one thing led to another and I landed up in this job. But Yeah, I think that is very difficult also as a woman of color. I think a lot of times there are like, you have to fight these weird stereotypes that people have. And I was also in a couple of jobs where I literally like, there was literally a lot of boy band syndromes where they were literally like,
Yeah.
we know what we're talking about, literally the only woman in the room sort of a situation. And also I think because of, a lot of times in Europe especially, or even in the US, people take gap years. So what happens is when they actually enter the workforce, they're already slightly older, right? So you have to imagine, when I entered the workforce, I was 26
Mhm.
or 25, and I'm already like sitting in like large C-level discussions. So literally people are like, how, like what, like you're too young for this, like and I already had experience of working from India and stuff. So those were the kind of stereotypes and then I also got like lot of like Indian stereotypes being thrown at me just because I'm from India and stuff like that. And yeah, so I think all of that makes you realize, A, you're either in the wrong crowd and the wrong environment that's not going to nurture you, or you just kind of like, you're like, okay, I'm standing up for this and let's move on. Let's kind of teach somebody a lesson today, right? So it just makes you stronger. But right now, I'm not at all in an environment like that. I think everyone's very like culturally aware, and they're very international of sorts.
Mhm.
So I think that has helped. So, but I think that was like the biggest hurdle of like, when you're moving from a country like India abroad, you have these hopes and dreams where you're like, oh, first world country, everything's gonna be perfect and blah blah blah. And then you come to Germany and you go to the KVR and it's like paperwork. So you're like, wait, did I just take a couple of steps
Yeah.
back as well? Yeah, so that's not really a challenge. I was just joking, but yeah,
Would
I
you
think that was the biggest one.
would you say it was more difficult for you to get a job here due to the language?
I wouldn't say so. No,
Okay.
I don't think language was a barrier. I think
Okay.
there was a lot of like I think especially at a lot of multinationals, there was a lot of intransparency, if that's a word.
Yeah.
Um,
Let's say it's a word.
just made
I
it up.
got it.
um, there was a lot of like opaqueness basically into what's happening behind the doors. So like after the interview, even if everything went really well and they were like, yeah, you're in and everything's done, a month later of following up, they'd be like, sorry, we lost your papers, we can't really like proceed because we lost your paper. Like that was literally one of the excuses I heard, and I'm like, you are a really large company, how can you do what? um so things like that, which also like at that point you question yourself, you're like, am I good enough, like did I actually like has it come to this, like all the years of effort and so on. So I think that was the biggest challenge that I had. Also, I mean, in a foreign country, you don't have your circle of family and friends and your
Yeah.
trust circle to actually be like, dude, I'm going through a tough time. You have to get through it by yourself, and I think that is the more tricky part.
But that's also what made you quite strong, I guess.
It
Um,
does.
so, what has been the most interesting thing you have learned in your current position? Was a question from community.
Most interesting thing that I've learned in my current position, that there is like a whole world beyond what you know right now, like unbelievably. Like you will assume like this is, and that's what made me also question like other people in other roles, like C levels of large company, right? Like you assume they know everything, but there's just this whole world that nobody knows of, right? And that's what I learn every day with my job, that every day I'm learning a new topic or I'm learning a new way that cybersecurity is applied. And I'm like, I did not know there is a group of 200 people sitting in a company doing just this day in and day out. I think that's my biggest learning, that question your assumptions of what you know, and question literally what you're doing on a day-to-day basis, and whether that really is one fulfilling your purpose, and whether you're learning sufficiently enough to like be like 50 years old and feel like at least 50% of what's happening in the world. I think that's been my biggest learning in my job.
Mhm. Sounds great. And you mentioned before that women tend to make themselves smaller and that they don't want to show off. Can you give any advice how to change this mindset?
Yeah, that's
Hmm.
it's a tricky one, because I also, like, to be honest, struggle with it. It happens to all of us at all times. So I think the first thing is, don't think of yourself as someone who's showing off. So when you are presenting something, when you are talking about something within your friend group, in a boardroom discussion, whatever it is, don't like switch off that voice in your head which is like, hey, you're showing off, just shush, like you're you're showing that you're bigger than you actually are. It's fine, show people you're bigger than you actually are. It's fine to also like stand up in a crowd and be like, I know about this, even if you know only 10%. That's exactly, like, to be honest, that's exactly what like the patriarchy does. They know 10% and they stand up for the 10%. So if you know 50%, you know more than that already. So just stand up for it. It takes, honestly, it takes a lot of conscious effort and training to like switch off that tiny voice in your head.
Mm.
And say, okay, shush, I don't care what you're saying, I'm going to speak up. And this boils down to all stages, right? Whether you're applying for a job and you see, okay, there are 10 different things that they're asking for in that job role, and I qualify only for 5. Don't switch it off because the other 5, maybe they don't even care about, they're just looking for the 5, right?
Exactly.
Just apply for the job. And don't also feel like, hey, I'm not like, oh, I'm saying too much, and then someone's gonna think that I'm such a show off, or I'm such a like a big mouth or a loud mouth. Or it doesn't matter what people think. If you know something, just say it, and I think it takes, honestly, on a personal level, it takes a lot of like just zoning into what your brain is trying to tell you. Like there's this thing, and maybe Lucia agrees, like in yoga, when you're doing yoga, there's literally like a, you're only as big as like your mind allows you to be. So when you're doing headstands or you're doing anything like that, you're literally like, your mind's like, you've never stood on your head, don't do it, you're going to fall, you're going to break your neck, oh my god, who's going to pay for your medical expenses? But when you do it, you're like, I did not know I could do that. So it's
It's
literally like you asking your mind to shut up and going ahead with it. And I think that's I think the biggest advice that's at least worked for me.
yeah, and I would just add, don't compare yourself too much with others.
Yeah.
Just go your own way, and don't get stressed if other people are louder. It doesn't
Mm,
mean they're better, or
mm,
it's not always the one who's the loudest who's the, yeah, that will proceed. And yeah, but I like your comparison with the yoga mindset. That's pretty good. Well, very well said. Yes, I think so
Thank
too.
you.
Do you have any more questions, dear community? Or is there anything? I think I've asked all I could ask you. If you want to add anything, is there anything additional you would like to talk about? You would like to, what we should definitely mention in here? I think we got a good overview over cybersecurity, about your community and women in cybersecurity. A bit of an idea how it is to come from another country to Germany and start working here. I learned personally that cybersecurity is, like general technology, a very open-minded field, and everyone can go start there, no matter where you come from, in different kinds of aspects. And we're open-minded. We're always welcoming newbies, and yeah, that's, I think, the most important thing you could take out of this. And yeah, I'm also surprised that you started coding at the age of 10 something, probably, right? And
Yeah.
it's super unnatural for us in Germany still these days. Uh, yeah, so that's definitely a better example. And it's pretty normal for women, right? That's
Yeah.
also something, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's just a part of school, right? Like some people in school hate it, and then some people in school like
Yeah.
it. They like computer class. And I loved computer class. Like it was like, there are some students who love it when it's like it's basketball time, like they have to go play basketball. I was like that for computer class. So, and there were a lot of people like that with me in my class. So I think it's about introducing it. And I know that now, I think coding isn't so far away. Like you have resources online to just start going learning to code. I learned Python like that. For example, I learned it on Code School. Um, and it's completely gamified. It's also fun now. It's not anymore textbook information that you're learning. So there's literally nothing stopping you if you do want to get into coding. The resources are just like right there.
They are everywhere.
Mhm.
Exactly.
And
Yeah,
you
it's
don't, by the way, you don't need your school to tell you if you're good or not. So just go
that's
learn
true.
to code.
It's true. It's just not institutionalized here. So I was surprised about this. I'm very interested about the educational forms. So that was very interesting. So thank you so much for your time.
I
There's
think there's
another
one more
question.
question to you though. So could we know
Could
more
we know more
about
about
women
women
in
in
tech?
tech and the upcoming initiatives, events, plans? I will, if I have the time. Yes, for sure. Women in tech. We are also a community, very general in tech. We started 2 years ago, um, here in Karlsruhe, where I live. It's also kind of a hub for technology, apart from Munich, of course, or Berlin. And we're a community of women who are encouraging other women to join us, of course, in technology, to come and to start there, or already just get into our network. So we are from different fields. We have women from data science, software engineering, Very, very broad. We have women who are in our, who are 10 years or 20 years experience in the technology field, but some are still students, for instance. I'm personally from the sales field, so I'm not the software engineering person right now, but I'm learning to code because I like it. And yeah, we are doing speak ups like this one. This is something we do every month on a Wednesday. And we talk with women about different topics, for instance, cybersecurity, for instance, software engineering, a lot of tech startup topics, because we have a lot of women who want to talk about their own startup, about their. Next month is Sonia. She's going to talk about a startup, Aurora Tech, who's mostly in German though, something with fire and woods, if I'm not mistaken, and some kind of detection, how you would detect a fire in the woods. Yeah, right now we're mostly speaking German in our community, which I'm kind of yeah, not ashamed, but we are also trying to approach more of an international community. We're all speaking English, of course, as well. We're also doing some workshops for coding. We are doing other discussions with other communities. We also have our little community chats on Discord once in a while. And yeah, doing a lot on social media these days to open up the visibility of women in technology in very general. Yeah, that's what we do. We're always looking for new members. We're always looking for companies who want to fund us or support us somehow, or interesting corporations. And always, yeah, we're always open for new ideas. So if the women in cybersecurity and women in tech would like to do another event once in a while, that would be fun. So it would be great to see you again. It was a pleasure to meet all of you, and also thank you for the nice questions here. We have a Facebook group which is yeah, called Women in Tech, DACH, DACH. We have a LinkedIn group. We have yeah, certain social media accounts if you want to follow us and stay updated. Yeah, that's what we do basically. Did I forget anything, Regina? No. Okay.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. So this is what we do. And mostly we're promoting women. That's it. We're trying to bring as many, making as many women in tech visible as possible. And also we're trying to get a kind of a diverse audience and kind of diverse picture of what. It's not only about, because you see I'm white and I'm blonde, but it's not, that's not why, like we're really trying to like have a very diverse community. Of course, it's not only women, we're open to any kind of groups, but as we are one part of more of a marginalized group in technology, that's where we start. Yeah.
Thank you, Lucia. Thank you, Regina. And thank you.
So maybe we see each other again one day. And until then, I hope you stay healthy and fine. And good luck with everything.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Bye-bye.